Hello, everybody. This is Jess from 3D Learning Experts, and you're listening to the LD Experts Podcast, the show for busy parents who want to help their kids with learning disabilities, or as I like to say, learning differences, go from surviving to thriving. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are here again with Diane Devenyi, who is going to spend the second half of our time demonstrating and showing us how my letters can be improved. And I'm so excited to learn how her whole process works.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about doing this as well. And as I said, you are a fine-tuned person. It's not that this is outwardly interfering with your ability to write legibly. But it could be the way that your brain works is it wants to know even better how to form these letters, and until that happens, it is interfering with your ability to just process words and sentences.
That is very true. I struggle a lot with words. That is one of my big challenges in life. So I would be so thrilled to be able to communicate my words better through this process.
Great. So do you want to pull up your assessment form so we can have a look at it?
Okay, there it is.
Okay, here it is. And people are going to look and go, oh my gosh, why are we talking about dysgraphia at all? But I'm not talking about dysgraphia. I'm talking about letter order versus letter disorder. The concept of order is that something is in its conventional, or what we accept to be the regular traditional way of, so that it's in its conventional condition, place, and position. So I'll give you an example just to think about first. When you set up a place setting with cutlery around a plate and a cup, in a traditional Western table, and you will generally have your forks on the left, your knife on the right, perhaps this soup spoon might also be on the right. Your dessert fork could, go in a couple of different places, but generally in order, you would expect the forks on the left, the knife and large spoon on the right. And so so the place is where they are in that lineup, small fork, large fork, plate, knife, spoon. But if you were to mix up that order and put a fork on the other side, so they're not in the correct place. Also, you could have it in an incorrect position. So you could have it upside down. You could have the forks pointing toward the tines of the fork pointing towards you, or you could have your plate upside down. And so that's position. And with respect to condition, you want your plates to be clean. You want them to not have cracks in them. So there's a lot of things in our lives, even your bed when you make it, your closet, a lot of things in our lives, we live with order. And we decide whether or not order is something that matters to us and that we attend to regularly. Some people cannot not make their bed. They must make their bed. And others say, I rarely make my bed. And so I will say your brain is always aware of whether there's order or disorder, but it's how much it matters to your brain whether there's order or disorder. And so that's why we look at beautiful printing that Jess has provided and say, well, that looks pretty nice. Like, how could there be any issue with that? But I'll show you in a moment how it could be that if Jess were to upgrade from her caterpillar version. This is the one that she learned, as a young child, into a new butterfly version of her letters, that could be something that her brain would really respond well to. So let's just begin by then looking at, for letters, condition is the formation of the letters. And we've all seen really poorly formed letters that are hard to recognize what they are. And so that's the condition. If we're looking for position, we're looking for where it is on the line. And if we're looking for placement, we're looking at spacing, or spacing is also position. Spacing and where it is on the line, the space between each letter and where it sits relative to the line. And then there's placement. Hold on. Now I'm getting, okay. If there's an issue with placement, that's when misspelling occurs, or if somebody has the alphabet order mixed up. But misspelling is it's in the wrong place. And the position is, and also if you have uppercase letters and lowercase letters mixed up in your alphabet. So those are different things that we can be looking for. But in terms of condition for Jess, we look and say, well, those are really well formed. But if we want to take it up a notch, we'll say, let's look at the conventional version of these letters. And you can even, if you look at the top of the line where it says accessathon pre-information form, you see how all the uppercase letters are exactly the same size. And you see how the lowercase letters, the ones that are half size, are all the same height. There's no variation. So let's have a look at Jess's letters. And so when somebody starts with their letter A, that is the standard. That is the standard that we're going to hold all the other letters to, because for the uppercase, they all conventionally are exactly the same height. And we see Jess started with a really strong A, a tall A, leaning back a bit, but that's, we all have our own style. But then her B is smaller and her C is smaller yet. And then the D kind of is a bit bigger. And as we look through, we see the G is a little bit smaller. And you see that it's not consistent. Even if we're looking at the second line, we see the T is much smaller than the others. And then the Y is much taller than the others. I will commend Jess on having an accurate uppercase Y, because it's very common for people to create an uppercase Y that's just a large version of a lowercase y. Now, Jess has hers kind of in a slightly handwriting form on lowercase, but often people will make the Y out of 2 pieces, but she's done 3, which, yes, high five on that one. So what's the big deal? The big deal is, for her brain, this is not what she looks at when she's reading. She is not producing what she sees when she's looking at printed letters, either on books and magazines or on screens. And so we don't know, is that having an effect on her? It may or may not. As I said, some people are totally okay going through their lives with messy beds every day, and others must make their bed. And so if Jess is a must make my alphabet exactly the way I see it kind of brain, then this could be a distraction, and it could be interfering with her ability to access words when she's writing. And
I'm definitely a must make my bed every day person.
Well, so there we go. There we go. So you have a strong desire for order.
Oh,
like
yes, absolutely.
Strong need for order. And so, most people would look at this and say, oh, I wish I could print like that. But your brain wants it even more orderly. It wants them to be consistent in a fuller way.
And people always told me I had very nice handwriting, so now I believe it, but I did not believe that as a kid. So there you
Well,
go.
but that's also because your brain is saying there's still something here. Like it's still, this isn't exactly what you see when you are printing out by hand. You know, like when you're printing out by hand and you see in things in books or you know, on screens, you see something else and your brain knows it. And that's why it's telling you. And I can't tell you how many adults will say to me, oh my gosh, I have the messiest writing. And then they present a sample that's pretty close to yours. And I'm like, really? I agree that there is disorder on a highly technical level, but I wouldn't call it messy. But in their mind, it feels messy. And so now when we look at your lowercase, now remember when I was talking about that boy who had the A and B the same size? Yours almost is like that, but his continued for the whole alphabet, if you can imagine. But when you, again, A sets the standard. It sets the height of you know, kind of the halfway mark, or the, you know, for the ones that when you think of those old books where you had this line in between to show you how tall to make the smaller letters, but the circular parts of the letters, such as A, B, C, D, E, G, O, P, Q, if you look where it says print the lowercase, you see all of them are the same size. The circular parts of all of those letters are the same size. And you have variation in the circular parts. And again, this could be a I must make my bed kind of situation that like you never were conscious of the fact that you were doing something other than what you were seeing until now. I brought it to your awareness. And so you might look differently at those things, but you've also got a lifetime of practicing with this particular, you know, set of letters. And so it's important to relearn your letters and do it in a way that is probably unlike the way you learn them in the first place, so that your brain really gets the message, this is something else happening here. And so I will say another variation that can often happen is with respect to where the letters are on the line. Some people, they start and they float up and down and do all kinds of things. Yours are pretty darn close, which is not surprising for a must make my bed kind of person. But you see that your J, your uppercase J, is a little bit below the line, like it's just dipping a bit below the line, even though, and the B does, actually a few of them do, but you're really serious about staying connected to that line. Like that is an order person. I must have order. Really pays a lot of attention to sticking on the line.
Well, and if you notice, when I usually write my name, I don't put a line at the top. But when I was doing the alphabet, I had to put that line there. It was the weirdest thing. Like I couldn't move on without putting the line at the top.
That's right. And so again, that's like, there's like your brain is kind of going, okay, like this isn't consistent. There's something going on here. And so the reason I ask people to draw a picture is so that if they have really poorly formed letters and it appears that there's a fine motor skill issue, I get them to do a drawing, because the drawing will demonstrate their ability to control the pen.
Because now I have a question. Because my daughter could not draw even a stick figure until she was probably about 8. However, she has probably the neatest handwriting, or the second neatest handwriting, of my 4 children.
So she I would say if her handwriting is neat, then that's where she really, like, when somebody must have order, and that's where they put their focus so that their letters are printed neatly. But there's another part. And remember when I said what happened to me was that I opened up creativity in ways that I had never experienced before. And, I studied piano, for until I started university. So I was a serious pianist. But as an adult, I tried to learn blues music before I did this other training. And I really could not just go off. I say, show me the pattern, and I'll repeat the pattern over and over again, but that's not blues. Like, you want to be able to create. And I didn't consider myself. In fact, I can remember consciously saying, if I want to do well at this school game, I'm going to have to shut down my creativity, because I knew it was going to interfere. Like at 9 years old, I made that decision. And so I would suspect that your daughter is reining in and bringing extreme order. And that makes it hard to be creative. It makes it hard to let go and just kind of express something artistically.
I don't know. She started singing at age 5, and her bedroom was always a pigsty. So I don't think order was a.
But order for this, order
Okay.
for like,
not everything in life.
Game. Yeah. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, we each have our places, and we each have our ways in which we can express ourselves. And so, yeah, being a singer, that's a creative outlet. But in terms of taking a pen or pencil and drawing something, she didn't have enough of a framework. And it might have been that if you'd said, okay, do these little grid type of drawings, she might have done well with that type, but that's not like, hey, just draw a flower or draw a tree. And that's what I'm saying. It's so interesting how unique we all are. It's so interesting how we each have our needs for order and our lack of need for order. And as long as it's not interfering with our ability to communicate, to learn, and to fully express what makes us come alive, it's not a problem. But as soon as we see there being a problem, depending on how sensitive we are, I always used to say, I think the most sensitive among us have the most difficult time learning, because our systems aren't designed to really bring confidence to those who take longer for their brain to make the patterns and to figure it all out. And I say the strongest students among us tend to be the ones who are totally okay with confusion and chaos, because they know that things will eventually settle down. They know that eventually they'll understand. And that's, I think, where Carol Dweck's work is so interesting, that if you tell everybody you can do this, we're just going to have to figure out the way that works for you. And as opposed to what a lot of children, and especially older adults, experience, which was, this is the way to learn. And if you don't learn, then there's something wrong with you. So we see, yeah, like, I mean, you've got that nice flair, you're totally creative, beautiful flower. And then we get your sample. And I see that you kind of do a combination of printing and connection, which is very common for people who don't go fully to cursive. They do a combination, and I tended to do that myself. I found it took me longer to actually write nice cursive the way I wanted it than kind of doing my own combination. But what you noticed as soon as you looked at your sample was that you left out a word. I like to draw flowers when I am class to help me stay focused. And it's interesting that you're writing about being focused, and and you missed a word. And so that's where we say, this is a make my bed kind of situation, where getting your letters completely in alignment with what your need for them to be will liberate your ability to be focused. Like right now, you're still thinking about how to write in a way rather than what to write, even though it's nicely formed, but you're still more focusing on what to write. And that's where dysgraphia is a problem for so many people, because they can't get past the what to write, or sorry, how to write. They can't get past the how to write when they're focusing on what the letters look like, and how to be creative and what to write is just not something that's going to work for them.
So that's why they can't get the information from their brain onto their paper, because they're stuck with the formation of the letters.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
And what was the most interesting when I, I've done a lot of assessments over the years, and every once in a while, I'll encounter somebody really, often a voracious reader, loves to talk, great with adults, curious, understands a lot of things. Sometimes they're like the leader type of personality, but they struggle with spelling and writing. And I remember the first time, years ago, a 10-year-old boy, and his mother came to me and said, he's failing at writing. And he's this bright kid who was running to be president of his class, and just all these things going. And so when I asked him to print out his upper and lowercase alphabets, he couldn't get past the letter L. He had no idea what came after the letter L, both in upper and lowercase. And his mom said, well, sing the alphabet song. He said, I tried. I don't know what comes next. And as we know, like there's that kind of weird thing, LMNOP. And some people might wonder, what is an LMNOP? What is that? But I often see things happen around those middle letters. But he absolutely could not. And I've encountered adults with the same situation. And I remember another 10-year-old boy, when I was assessing him, and he couldn't get past the letter I. But this is a kid so bright, knew so many things. I think his specialty was worms. Like he could tell you all kinds of things about worms. And when his mom came back after the assessment, and I said, I have some really great news, because we know why this is happening, why he's struggling to spell, and why he's got dysgraphia. And the saddest thing was when he leaned over and said, please don't tell Dad. And I thought, oh, and this is what I'm talking about. When somebody feels a lot of pressure to perform, if it doesn't come together in a time that feels like it should, they create emotional blocks to being able to eventually work it through. And you have to approach it again in a completely new way. You can't teach something the way that didn't work the first time. Absolutely. But I've worked with so many students who have been through occupational therapy, and it didn't help them with their dysgraphia. And that's because it's not really different enough from how they were originally taught.
Well, my youngest son, he reversed lots of letters, and at 16, he went to vision therapy, and he had done physical therapy, no, speech therapy. I tried to get occupational therapy through the school, but they wouldn't do it. And so vision therapy helped to some degree. Like his handwriting is much better than it was. It was painful to watch him write. And he doesn't reverse letters anymore. But it's interesting when you were sharing because my second youngest son, I remember telling him, mentioning that he had horrible handwriting. Bad mom, now I know. Um, but he didn't think he had horrible handwriting until I told him that. And I'm trying to start to think how old he was when we had that conversation. Because when I started homeschooling him when he was in sixth grade, by then he had such writer's block, he could never write anything down. He was that description you talked about. You know, he could talk to adults, he could talk to everyone, he could communicate very well. He read ferociously back then. And but he had to dictate every paper to me from sixth grade until he graduated because he could never get his thoughts out on paper. And so I wonder if it was me telling him he had sloppy handwriting that kind of shut him down.
Well, I can tell you, he always knew he had it, whether or not it was conscious, but on some level, he always knew. But yeah, it's just, and each of us have different emotional responses to different triggers.
And he is my most sensitive child. So
Right.
he was very, that's why I started homeschooling, because the teachers, I think, caused him such anxiety because he was a perfectionist and they were very critical, and he just internalized it way too much.
Yeah. So, and that's the case. And I just keep thinking, gosh, what kind of a world are we creating when the super sensitive are left behind or made to feel inadequate? I mean, we need the super sensitive who care about each other and animals and the planet. Like, we need those people thriving and being fully expressed, if we really want a world that's going to work for everyone.
Yeah.
So that's part of my campaign is I want the sensitive to thrive. I want, and the ones that are sensitive and are struggling with literacy issues, I want them to know, as I said in my poem previously, I want them to know that they have a lot to offer and it's never too late. It's never too late to turn things around. So yeah, do you have any other questions about your assessment?
Um, well, you didn't mention anything about my Z. That always has to have a line through it. I don't know if
Well,
there's.
you did it on your lowercase, but not your
Yes,
uppercase.
I don't do it on my uppercase, only my lowercase.
Yeah, and I mean, what I like when I grew up, we always understood that that kind of Z was more of a European style. And so sometimes I just think, okay, I mean, somebody might have seen one like that and thought that's pretty cool, or maybe it helps them remember which way to turn it, because that's a letter that's reversed a lot, as well. J and Z, or in Canada, Z, are, and the rest of the world, are, are often reversed. And when you were talking about the letter reversals, I remember when Ron Davis would talk about some people who are very, very strong visual learners. And he would say they can take their mind's eye and tell you what's going on in the next room. Like they have this capacity, and it's kind of like the baseball players who can see the stitching on the ball as it's going over the plate at 90 miles per hour. Or Muhammad Ali actually told Ron Davis that his mind's eye, and he was dyslexic, his mind's eye was 20 feet above the ring, and he could move it around and see different angles on his opponent and anticipate things that you don't see just from looking straight on.
Wow.
And so I've always thought that these letter reversals, it's almost like, what if they're looking at the letters from the other side of the page? Like, what if some of the, if you aren't able to control this incredible imagination you have, to have it look straight in front of you, then you are destined to have confusion. And so it's really important to gain the ability to be focused and balanced. And so there are a variety of ways you can do that. It's now well known for in the ADHD world that balancing activities really help your ability to be focused. And so learning to stand on one foot in the other, you can just for fun start brushing your teeth, standing on one foot, and switch each day, and just build up your ability to do that. You can, like in my programs, like now I have one of my programs is for families to do all the work together, and the parents, they'll kind of go, yeah, well, I'll do this for them. I say, well, actually, you have no idea what's going to happen to you. And they're always like so excited when they learn the alphabet forward and backward, and all kinds of things happen for them. But we had, for balancing training, we in week 1, we have the Great Balance Contest, and you can either see if you can put on a sock on standing on each foot, like standing on one foot and putting on a sock while you're standing, and doing, and just being creative. And we had this one little girl in the UK who she put 7 socks on one foot while standing on the same foot the whole time. She started with her own, then her mom's, then her dad's, and she ripped out. And so, and then another family, they were vacationing at a lake, and there was a floating dock in the middle of the lake. So they decided to do their sock challenge on the floating dock. Well, each of them were trying to make it unsteady for each other and just having a great time with it. But so there's lots of ways that you can practice your balance, but it's good for you at any age, and especially as you age, because one of the most common problems that the elderly have is falling.
Oh, my mother falls all the time. I'm terrified for her.
Right. And you can build up your ability to be balanced. I also certified as a yoga instructor as part of my my kind of obsessive desire to know as much as I can about the brain body connection, and we do a lot of work with balancing, and keeping hip mobility and all of those things. But balancing is really good for learning, so that's something you can start playing with right away, and not doing any work until you've made the decision to be focused and balanced. If teachers just took a bit of time to prepare the class to be focused and balanced and connecting to the level of energy that's required for a particular activity, it would make a world of difference. And so that's part of what we do. We work on connecting your energy level, saying, okay, right now you're going to be doing this. Take a moment. What does your energy level need to be so that you will be successful doing this activity? And whether it's preparing, we play with koosh balls, standing on one foot, preparing. So it's whether that or just sitting down, but I will always invite people to take a moment to just connect into the state that is going to bring them the success. And it's not the habit in our world to do that, but it would make a huge difference for so many people. The final thing then is, once you have the mindset and belief in your ability, and you prepared your body and made the brain body connection, that's when you get to have fun and do the hands-on holistic alphabet relearning. And I gave you a quick glimpse before we started, but I'll switch my camera view and hopefully it'll work. And you see some letters.
Yes.
And so what happens is you get modeling clay, non-drying modeling clay, and you roll them into ropes about the thickness of a pencil. And we can make really long ones. And then we look through And you can see here, I've got kind of an alphabet guide, but we also have a larger guide, but I have a guide here. There's actually photographs of letters that I made many years ago. And you look through and you think, okay, how many letters need this piece that is at the back of the B? And you look and you say, oh, there's the D, the E, the F, H needs 2. And it's starting to look in a really deep way into all of the patterns in the letters. So for those who have that brain that really wants a sense of order and really integrate the patterns, it's a great way to do it. And then we make what I call the alphabet factory, which is what I created in the classrooms. And even this system of having a mat so that you have a lot of guidance for creating your letters. And so it's an experience in getting to know the letters really well in a way that you haven't before, and then being able to pick them up and just connecting through the hands into your mind's eye. And I remember in one of the schools where I was doing my projects in Toronto, and it was the principal of the school who brought me in. She was really keen on what I was doing. And the school superintendent came in, and this was a special education class at the time that I was in. And so she came and saw the letters that these children were making, and she picked up this little girl's letter A, and she held it in her hands and closed her eyes, and she said, wow, I'll never think of the letter A the same ever again. And then she put it down and she complimented all the students on their beautiful letters, because as you can see, they really, like, all those rules are met. The same heights, you learn about spacing, and you really understand the proportions relative to each other. And you do this, and then you make your lowercase, but we start from Z and go to A. And so just to really work your connection to forward and backwards, and there's all kinds of games that you can play. One of the favorite is the alphabet mix-up game. One partner will turn their back, and you do sneaky things like mixing the E and the F, or I don't know, the C and the O, or you turn the Y upside down. Like, you can do things, and then they have to tell you what you changed. And it's learning to communicate and learning to be really certain of how the letters look, but you're feeling them, you're tracing them, you're connecting to them in a way that I would love every child when they are first learning their letters to have. But the great news is it's never too late to relearn them. It's never too late to create your whole new version. And it's and it just can be a lot of fun. So that's what we do there. Do you have any questions about this?
The clay, you said it's non-hardening, but it seems so hard.
Well, it's like plasticine. I don't know if you've heard it, like if you've heard of that brand name, or they call it modeling clay, but there's air drying clay. And I've had some people accidentally get that instead. Like the family in Dubai, I said, I'm not going to ship things to you in Dubai. If you can find a way to get it. She was so excited. Yay, we got the clay. And then she realized it wasn't the right kind because it was air drying. But I mean, yeah. Now I'll tell you what's really interesting. It does harden slightly, especially because we're now heading towards winter in our part of the world. And so the air isn't really hot. But one of the reasons I created what I called the alphabet factory system, where first we cut all the parts you need and then we start putting them together. It was from one little 6-year-old boy that I worked with, whose mother was really concerned because he was getting really terrible headaches at school every single day. And so when I started working with him and we were rolling the clay into ropes, his hands were so hot. He was so anxious that the clay was almost melting in his hands. And I thought, okay, I've got to figure out a way that will work for a little bit and let it cool down and work and cool. And that's when I said, let's make a factory and let's look at the pieces we need. And so then he would heat it up and then we would put it aside and it would cool down. And so that's kind of how I came up with that idea. But this is pretty stiff clay, and yeah, like when you're working with it, it softens, and then as soon as your hot hands are away from it, then it cools down, and you can pick up, like, even, you know, this W, it's one of the trickiest letters to pick up, like most awkward, but you learn to connect everything well enough. Like, this is, I always say, this is like that 10,000 hours of expertise that Malcolm Gladwell talked about. You don't need to do, like, 10 hours will get you upper and lowercase alphabets. And it will, it's just, it takes you to another level. And once you have these in your mind's eye, you will never lose them. You will know they're always there. And even though I did this work more than 20 years ago myself, I find every time, you know, last week I was writing out a birthday card to a friend, and I still love knowing my letters. I still love having the certainty about how I want things to look and actually being able to do it. And so it's having freedom to choose whether or not I want to, as opposed to not having that freedom. Some people don't have the freedom.
So you said it takes about 10 hours. So this is how many letters does one create in a day?
Well, so now the 10 hours also included doing the learning warm-ups, learning how to be focused and balanced. And now I've got to a point where if I've rolled my ropes and I've cut all the pieces I need, then when I've made a video for my course about putting everything together, I think it was 39 minutes that I can put letters together, because I've broken it down to so many parts and in the system. But for most people, like, to make an uppercase alphabet, and it's a lot more intense. The experience of relearning your uppercase alphabet, there's something about it, even though they're all the same height and they all sit on the line in the same way. Getting through the uppercase alphabet, it takes much longer than, and because you've already done the formation, but the small letters are much easier to form. And so, but usually in a workshop, by the end of 5 hours of instruction, we will have done the learning warm-ups for a couple of hours, practiced all those kinds of things, energy level games, and then spend about 3 hours getting the uppercase alphabet made. Then the next day we'll do all the games of, mastering and learning the letters, and then we'll move on to do the lowercase. And that takes much less time. Like, you can make your lowercase probably in about an hour, and then you've already done mastery games. So yeah, that's the way it tends to go.
And so tell us more about your course. Can they order it online?
Yeah, so my online, my website is thelearningforce.com. I had a little 6-year-old many years ago when I was saying, I need to make a company. And he said, how about the force? Like, the force be with you. I said, I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but I thought the learning force, sure. So the learningforce.com is where you will see the different types of programs. And so and the courses are called the Wild Alphabet Adventure, because I realized I want it to feel fun. The platform that I use is Experientify. It's a gamified platform. So every time you go through and you complete the parts of the program, you get to click buttons and get pitching. and gain points and just see the progress you're making. And that's a system that has demonstrated in a lot of online programs. They say that 3% of them are actually completed with the transformation promised. And with this type of gamification, it actually goes up to as many as 70%, like 50 to 70%. So I'll come back to you.
Welcome back.
Yeah. And so I have the Wild Alphabet Family Adventure. There's one specifically for ESL, learning English as a second or foreign language. And so that's the family in Dubai. They're doing that. And there's also, I've realized a need for, and the family one, everybody does it. Everybody has a kit, everyone has a dashboard, and they go through it together, and it's amazing what happens, like the bonding that happens. And what was interesting is the very first cohort I had when I finally had my online at the beginning of 2021, they were all young adults. I would be talking to parents about what I was up to and go, oh my gosh, my son who's in college really needs that. Or my daughter who just graduated, I'd love her to do this. And I said, well, okay, are you going to all do it together? And they said, yeah. So the family adventure is getting everyone to do it together. The ESL is also done generally as a family, but there is an individual track as well. But I've realized that there are a lot of students who are being homeschooled, just as you did with your son, because the traditional system isn't going to work for them. And I'm calling it the Wild Alphabet Bootcamp Adventure. And we meet every day for an hour, and we really go through and get the foundation done. And then we move on to deeper things, because there are add-ons after of spelling, punctuation, reading comprehension. And so I've got my first cohort starting soon doing that, and it's for 13 to 18-year-olds.
Okay.
And so they're not doing it with their parents. They're working with their peers. And I think there's a big need for that age. And this is a way of having them feel like this is actually, it's cool. For lack of a better word, here I am, word geek, coming up with a great word like cool.
Well, that's amazing. And before we part ways, share about your new book.
Yes. So the book is called Dear Genius, and it's the first of a series that I'm writing. And so the first book is called Harness the Hidden Power in Your ABCs. And it's exactly what we've been talking about, that when you really relearn your letters in a way that works for you, there is power in that. And so the book talks about the experiences I've had working with different students and coming to the realization and understanding of what letter disorder is, taking you through the parts of the assessment that we've gone over as well, and then a little teaser about things you can do to turn things around and really integrate that new alphabet. And I'll say there's one other thing that I'm doing that are Ask Me Anything, and they're going to be on Wednesdays starting next week. Zoom, Facebook, we're sorting out exactly how that's going to happen, but it's just getting people to be able to come and ask specific questions, and it's in the themes and styles that I approach. I'm not talking about what others are doing. I want people to really get a deep dive into what we've been talking about. And so, I've given you the link for pre-orders, because the book is open for pre-orders now. And if you are pre-ordering, when you buy one for $19.95, you can purchase a second one and gift it. So buy one, gift one for $5. And that includes all shipping throughout North America and the UK. So, and the book will be available soon. I'm just waiting on the artwork coming back and then putting it all into place, and we'll be up and going. But if you pre-order from the learningforce.com website, you are eligible for that pre-order bonus.
Okay. And so what happens if this doesn't get out until like the week that your book comes out? Depending on when your book comes out and depending on when this gets
yeah, that was the thing I was going to ask you actually, when this is going to be coming out. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, people can still, or if people order through the website, I'll probably have that bonus available for probably for the month of November. Because I'm hoping that people will think, oh, stocking stuffer, and think about somebody that they think might benefit from this, or even a teacher's gift, something like that. So yeah, I probably will do that. So
all right. Well, that sounds good. We can get this out before the end of November. So that sounds great. All right, Diane, it's been so wonderful having you be a part of our show for 2 weeks. And I'm really excited to share all the information for our clients who, or for people who struggle with dysgraphia, and it sounds like ADHD and all sorts of different learning struggles that you can really help with that. I look forward to purchasing your book and getting more insight on it and maybe becoming a protege of yours.
That would be exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you for doing what you're doing. And I look forward to future interactions.
Thank you, Diane. Have a wonderful day.
You as well.
Okay.